Joining us in studio tonight, very pleased to have with us from kniferights.org, the chairman and founder, Mr. Doug Ritter. How are you, Doug?
I'm doing great, Cam. It is wonderful to be here and actually be in the studio for a change.
I know, it's fantastic to see you. Yeah, and wow, how about this coverage? Big front page story over in the New York Times over the weekend.
The front page of the Sunday Times will definitely change what you're doing. And, we could complain about some of the little errors made, but overall, for an article in a newspaper like the Times, it was pretty well balanced, and it gave, I think, a pretty fair look at what Knife Rights is trying to do in New York.
Absolutely.
And what we're fighting against there. Yeah,
and let's talk a little bit about what's happening in New York, and if you could just lean in a little bit closer to your microphone. There you go. Because this was sort of the first time that the knife issue kind of burst onto the national scene with what was going on in New York City. There were regional stories, but that was the first time that it kind of caught the national media's attention. I think because it was happening in their backyard, the DA going after knives that were sold at places like Home Depot.
Yeah, it's what's amazing about this is that the DA went after the same knives that Congress just a year before had specifically exempted as not being gravity knives and switchblades. And then he goes after a bunch of big businesses, Home Depot, REI, large companies,
right.
and basically said, you're selling illegal knives, even though Congress said specifically those aren't illegal. One-hand openers and assisted openers make up 80% of the pocket knives sold in the U.S. today. That's what's in everyone's pockets.
And people, and the DA in New York wanted people to go to prison for having one of these.
He threatened them with prison. 1 year for every knife they sold. So what's a big company going to do? You would hope they would stand up to that. But,
yeah.
Knives are a small part of their business. They made a business decision. They basically sold us all down the river. And we've decided that someone has to stand up for this. And that's what Knife Rights is trying to do in New York.
And you mentioned the story from a year earlier when the customs enforcement tried to change the definition of what a switchblade was, and you had a huge response from gun owners, knife owners. When they saw what was happening, they were
outraged.
Absolutely,
they were absolutely outraged. And what was great was Congress was outraged. In an era where bipartisan issues are few and far between. We got bipartisan support, strong bipartisan support to tell customs, hands off our pocket knives, which makes this effort in New York City by DA Cyrus Vance Jr. even more outrageous.
And what's crazy about this is over in England where guns are banned, we will sometimes joke about knife control, and you've had doctors groups that have come out and have said, well, we don't actually need sharp knives. You can have dull knives, you can have knives with rounded edges. That's fine for your kitchen. There's no reason you need to have a pointy object in your home at all. Here we like to think, well, it's not happening, but it really could. And the same arguments that we see brought forth for new gun control laws are often the same types of arguments as to why this particular blade is so horrifically scary that it cannot be sold in the United States.
Well, certainly. It's scary. Oh, my gosh. If we go down that prejudicial road, then how can you say, well, I'm scared of that guy because his skin is black, and therefore we should ban all black people because they're scary to me? That's absurd. It's absolutely absurd. Knives and guns are very similar in that they're inanimate objects. It's the people that create the problem. People are starting to recognize that maybe knives are an easier target in their effort to take weapons and tools away from people.
Because gun owners have organized. You've got organizations like the National Rifle Association.
You've been fighting this battle for decades, and you're winning. So let's go after someone who doesn't have an organization behind them. And Knife Rights was formed to prove that wrong. There is an organization willing to stand up and fight for knife owners. that these are essential tools. These are tools used every day by millions and millions and millions of Americans. It's somewhat ironic that we turn to the Second Amendment because they are certainly arms. I mean, both Heller and McDonald mentioned knives in the opinions. Mm-hmm. They are certainly arms. We turn to their rare use as a weapon to defend our right to carry the tools that we use every day.
You know, but we saw back in the 1990s when the semi-auto ban was first introduced, and then you saw actually, I guess you can even go back further to the Saturday Night Special ban, the dividing and conquering strategy that they want to use and parcel off, gun owners into these various subgroups, and if no one comes to the aid of anybody else, then we can win. That was sort of their attitude.
Yep.
And the fight for knife control is really just taking this one step further.
It is. What's actually sort of nice about this, when you look at it from the Second Amendment perspective, is we're introducing the Second Amendment to a whole bunch of people who never considered the Second Amendment their amendment. Because now knife owners who may or may not own guns, many of them don't, are coming to the realization that, wow, the Second Amendment protects my right to carry this tool every day. Mm-hmm. This tool that I use in my work, at home, my recreation, whatever. It's just a tool, and they want to take it away from me. But the Second Amendment's going to keep them from doing that. I'm going to become a supporter of the Second Amendment. You know, that's a unanticipated nice benefit. The problem, of course, is it takes a lot of money to fight somebody like the DA of New York City.
Yeah,
a lot of money.
Yeah, what is the latest? What's going on in New York right now?
The DA has got himself a slush fund of almost $2 million. They are prosecuting just about anyone they can catch that has a knife clipped to their pocket. Almost all of those are ending up in some sort of deal. We had our first defendant come online just a couple months ago, submitted our motions, and all of a sudden, a situation where they didn't want a deal became one they did want a deal, because now they were facing someone with really good arguments.
Oh, really?
And suddenly we got what's known as ACD, which is an adjournment for dismissal. We don't think they want to go to court on this, but one way or another, we're going to take them to court because we know we can win. Yeah. This is really straightforward. Not only with regards to the Second Amendment, but New York state law itself is being abused because the law does not cover these knives. Their gravity knife and switchblade law does not cover one-hand openers and assisted openers knives. It's plain as day.
All right, now for somebody who's not a gun owner, who's listening to this, Doug, they're probably saying, "Well, what's the difference? What's the big deal? Why ban one or the other? What is the difference? Why and why are they trying to say that what is not a switchblade is a switchblade?"
Because they want to take knives for political purposes away from people. It's a control issue. It's just like gun control. This is something they can take away, and under the telling people it's to lower crime, they get more control. They're in charge. I mean, we're talking about 80% of the pocket knives sold in the U.S. today. I mean, this is not just a small part of what's out there. Mm-hmm. This is what a significant majority of Americans have decided is, for perfectly practical reasons, a great idea. A knife that you can open with one hand, so that you don't have to put something down to open up your knife, so that you don't have to let go of the rope that you're holding on for dear life to open your knife. I mean, these are extremely practical tools. Why? Look to the politics. Look to the power.
So what made you get involved, Doug? I mean, what made you decide, all right, I'm standing up for this, enough's enough?
A weak moment. A number of years ago, about 5 years ago, the Wall Street Journal ran an article about these terrible tactical knives. And it was like every bad article you've ever read on assault weapons, rolled it to one article, but just substitute tactical knives for assault weapons.
Okay.
It was horrible. And I had an epiphany. It was like, there's no NRA. Who's going to respond to this? And I'd seen what was happening in Europe and what was happening in England and all the incredible restrictions on knives. And I suddenly realized that if we didn't get organized, if we didn't form an organization like the NRA, but for knife owners, that's where we were headed. And lo and behold, that's where they're trying to take us.
All right, so around the country, when we're looking at the gun control issue right now, I mean, we can look at micro-stamping, the one gun a month laws, the lost or stolen gun ordinances that are trying to be introduced, the ammo registration. I mean, I'm aware of the specific types of legislation that are being introduced to go after our gun rights. What are some of the common tactics that you're seeing when they're attacking knife rights around the country?
There are two ways that happens. One is at the local municipality level. Often a town or a city decides that they're going to restrict knives in some way, by length, by whether it locks or not, some definition that severely restricts what you can carry or where you can carry it.
Okay.
And because these tend to be little local battles, for an organization our size, it's very hard to fight. And that's how we came up with the idea of going after knife law preemption, which we passed the first knife preemption law in the country in Arizona this year, which is just like firearms preemption. It says the state law prevails, and all the horrible municipal ordinances and regulations no longer have any effect. That reduces what we have to keep an eye on to the state level, which is much, much easier to fight than little municipal battles.
And it's also a heck of a lot easier if you are a knife owner and a knife carrier to not run afoul of the law as you cross from town to town,
which is the problem when you don't have preemption.
Yeah.
The other way that they're taking us on is what's happening in New York, where a DA or somebody like that decides for political purposes that they're going to simply ignore the law or interpret the law in a way that's convenient for their agenda and simply go after knives in a way that in New York they have virtually no retailer carries one-hand opening knives. The vast majority of internet retailers have quit selling into New York because he's threatened to go after them, even though he has no jurisdiction to do that.
Wow.
So if you're a citizen in New York City and you want a practical, simple, one-hand opening pocket knife, it's going to be difficult. And God forbid you actually clip it to your pants and walk down the street, because you will get arrested and thrown in jail and threatened with a year in jail for a Class 4 misdemeanor.
That is, and again, in New York, I mean, good luck getting a concealed firearms license. Whether you're carrying this for a tool, whether you're carrying a knife for self-defense, the idea of getting thrown in jail for a year because the local DA there doesn't like the type of knife that you're carrying, because it is, and again, a knife that is the most common type sold in America. Before we run out of time here, I want to go to the phones at 1-866-NRA News, 866-672-6397. Carl is in Kansas City this evening. Carl, how you doing, sir?
Oh, I'm alive.
Well, I'm glad to hear it. I'd be a little freaked out if you had answered otherwise.
Yeah, this would be a long-distance call.
Indeed, it would. Hey, so you have a question for Doug Ritter?
I actually have kind of a comment.
Okay.
It used to be that man was defined as the tool user. Well, after some of the research with the great apes, who discovered that they pick up sticks and rocks and use them as pounding implements and poking implements, yet to my knowledge, none of them have ever picked up a sharp edge and used it as a knife. So the definition of man, the tool user, could now get redefined as man, the knife user. So these laws are attacking and questioning the very definition of humanity.
I like that, Carl. Hey, man, I appreciate the phone call. I just realized as well that Doug doesn't have his headphones on. So let me just quickly summarize what Carl said. Point out, man is known as the tool maker. And yet Carl said that no animals have been known to, we've seen chimps and apes pick up rocks, use those as sort of bashing tools, but we've never seen an animal pick up an edged object and use that.
So that's a human thing.
So perhaps man is the knife user and not the tool user.
I think that's fair to say. A knife is one of man's oldest tools, which is what makes this so horrific. That people want to take away our tools.
We have now progressed to the point, Doug, where we can't be trusted with things our caveman ancestors could be trusted with.
Well, the sad thing is,
before long they'll be taking fire away from us.
I mean, in England, where they've pretty much banned most one-hand opening lock blade pocket knives, they have a horrible problem with what they call knife crime. Violence committed with knives.
Right.
They're mostly cleavers and kitchen knives. So it's, it doesn't solve anything.
No, it doesn't. Look, back in the Middle Ages, we didn't need silverware, so maybe that's the next step. We'll just ban silverware. We can ban napkins. We can all wipe our hands on the dog. And
how are they going to play baseball without baseball bats? Because people are killed with them too.
Baseball is on its way out anyway, Doug. Haven't you heard?
I'm not going there. No, you're not going to do that to me.
Hey, Doug, I can't thank you enough for joining us in studio tonight. It is incredible to know just how far-ranging this attack on our liberties really is, and I really appreciate your time.
Well, I appreciate your having me. I encourage all your listeners to go to kniferights.org. Please, this is a significant fight for a small organization. We need your support. We need your money. I'm not afraid to beg. I'm not too proud to beg because, when you have a bully like Vance, that's the only thing he understands. We got to take him to court, and we've got to shove the law down his throat.
All right, Doug Ritter, thank you again, sir. Look forward to doing this again soon.